I'm just going to close my GoToMeeting, and I'll just be here.
Okay, Professor. Got it out.
Okay. So if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Let me move ahead. So let me talk about this EVM demo that I'm going to do. Can you mute your mics, please?
Yeah. Hang on, we got to mute Jeff's.
Sure. And if you need to speak, just unmute and say whatever you want to say. But or you can just type saying, we have a question.
Can you mute that right there?
Oh, just a minute, sorry. Is that better? Oh, I muted my...
Just a microphone. And if you're listening to the main audio on the overhead projector, that's fine. Oh, this is much better now. Okay, so let's get going. And if you have any questions, just type your question on the chat window, and that should be it. So what I'm going to do today is quickly talk about EVM demo. What I've done is I've put this Excel sheet that I'll be showing you on my PowerPoint on Canvas. So if you want to go ahead and get that file as well. And even if you don't get it now, you can always get it later on too. So there's three basic elements that we've talked about. I think this is the third time I'll be hitting on this. The first basic element of a EVM system is the planned value. It's also known as the budgeted cost of work, which means that what you planned out for the whole of the project. And then the second one is the earned value, which is also known as the budgeted cost of work performed. So how much work you've done so far, and that's the budgeted cost of that. And then the actual cost is what you spent actually on the project that cannot change because you've already spent that much going forward. So those are the three basic elements of any earned value system. So here is an example, and if you can take a look at this example, it has 10 tasks. Each task has an ID, and the tasks have been listed from task 1 to 10 in the second column. And then there's a planned effort, which means that how many hours each task or activity will take. For example, you have task 1, which will take 24 hours. So if it's going to take 24 hours and then the duration is in 3 days, that means you're spending 8 hours every day. And then the start day and the end day is 1 and 3. And again, there's a predecessor, which is a resource 1. So what that means is that which resources are assigned to each activity for that to be finished up. So that's your resource which is needed to finish that task. So you have duration, start and end day, and then you have resources. So let's move to the next step, in which we're going to look at how we will calculate out the number of hours. So this is the planned value calculation, and we're trying to find out the effort. So the critical path of this project is 17 days. And then activity 1, which takes 3 days or 8 hours every day, is a total of 24 hours. And you can see that on the first row, which is row number 1 of task ID 1. And then so on. And then the predecessor for activity 2 is number 1. And the predecessor for activity 3 is number 1, 2. And then so on. So you can see that all the activities can begin right after activity 1 is finished, but task number 5 cannot begin until after task number 4 has finished. So, and then what's happening down there is the totals for all the different activities that you're seeing down there. And then that's the cumulative hours for each and every activity. Okay, all good so far. And let's do the planned value calculation for the cost now. So in this one, we've added the resource rate, and this is exactly the same as the slide that we saw 2 slides ago, but we've added how much it costs to finish every resource hour. So this is the amount spent for every hour of effort, as you can see. Okay. Now this is a little bit more complicated, and what we're doing in this slide, if I may go back 2 slides, is we're taking the number of hours you have here and multiplying each by its respective effort, how much it costs to do an hour of effort. And that is how we get this sheet. So for example, for task ID 1, you spent $18 in day 1, $16 in day 1, $16 in day 2, and $16 in day 3, and so on. And you can see that you're getting a total right at the bottom in the second one. And you're taking a cumulative of the last row, to get a cumulative amount of that you're spending for the project. Okay. Now, a quick clarification slide here. What is remaining effort? So now you can have in any project which can say that we have a total of 40 hours of work that needs to be done, and you're right now at 10 hours done with the project. But at that point, you go back to the project lead and ask them, how long do you think it's going to take you to finish the project? And they come back and say, oh, instead of 30 more hours, it's going to take us 20 more hours. So now you're ahead of schedule. So let's take a look at how that works out. So if you have 40 hours to finish, that's your planned effort, and you have 10 hours done, that means that you're 10 hours into the project, you're 25% done, which is your estimated earned value. And this is only for hours. We're not putting dollar amounts here. This is just hours at this point. And at this time, the project lead says it will take 20 more hours to finish. So you've done 10 hours, and then you have 20 hours remaining, and you divide that by 30 hours, and that gives you 33%. So that's your revised earned value, if you may. So when you begin any activity, you actually don't finish as per the planned effort. You may have a variance, and you're revising your earned value as you go on. So what's earned value? Let's take a quick look at that again. Earned value is equal to your percent complete, how much effort you've completed, and you multiply that by the effort, how many hours you put in, and you multiply that by the rate per hour. And that gives you the earned value. If you don't use the rate for every hour, then the earned value is expressed in terms of effort. What that means is you're just not putting a dollar value to it, you're just putting an hour value to that one. And again, if you have any questions, stop me if you would, please. Here's another concept in which we look at activity finishing up. So how do you know how much is percent complete? There's what is known as a 50-50 assignment. In this assignment, you right away the activity begins, you assign a 50% value to it, and the moment it begins, you have a 50%. Now, this is usually not used in assigning, because if you want to know more specific details of a project, you won't find that out until about the 50% mark. So in some cases, you would use what is known as 0, 25%, 50%, 75%, and 100%. In some cases, you would actually monitor it on every single day, at the end of every day. And the reason you would do that is you find that activity to be really critical and you want that to finish on time. So this is a trade-off. When you do the 50-50, the activities are not that critical. Even if they get delayed, you're fine because they're not the critical path. But for the activities in the critical path, you may monitor them on a day-to-day basis. So let's do the earned value calculation. So in this case, we saw the effort, which was right here. How much is the effort that you put in? And then we've put in a column here, which is your percentage complete, which says task 1 is 100% complete, task 2 is 75% complete, task 3 is 60, and so on. So you're taking those hours, multiplying it by the respective percent complete, and then you again multiply that by the resource rate, which is the amount spent doing every hour of work, and that gives you the last column. Okay. Now this is just for day 10. What that means is this is not for the whole project, but as of day 10, where is the project at any given point? Now let me just back up a little bit here. Now you can see that for task 1, it's 100% finished. That means that you had assigned $48 to it and you actually have earned $48 for it. But for task number 2, you actually put in 32 hours and you have it at 75% complete and the rate is $3. So what that means is you've only spent $72 or you've only earned $72 of that project. So if as you go down the list, you can see that some activities are finishing earlier and some activities are not finishing as planned. So once you do the cumulative, as long as you're ahead of your planned value, then you're on schedule. If those activities are on the critical path, then that's a problem because you may not get finished on time. And again, if you have any questions, you can unmute and ask them at this point. So I'm guessing there are no questions so far. Okay. So let's move on. So here's the actual cost calculations. So let me show you how this is done. Now you had a resource rate, okay, and then you multiply that by your actual hours, which is this right here, in which what you're doing is you're saying that the actual hours used for activity 1 or task 1 is, instead of using 24 hours, you use 30 hours. And then for task number 2, you use 32 hours. Okay, but it's only 75% complete. And then for task number 3, you, instead of using 48, you are at 27.5 since the activity is at a 60%. So now what you're doing is you found the planned value for day 10, you found the earned value for day 10, and now you're finding the actual cost for day 10. So now you can see that there's some which are over the amount, and when I say that, if you see for task number 2, you should be at $96, you are at $96, but you're only 75% finished on that. Okay, and then you can see for task number 3, you actually only use 110 of your value. In reality, you should have been at 152. And your earned value is actually 115, so you're actually lower than that, lower than your earned value. And again, if you look at task number 4, you are at $100, which is less than your earned value. So anything which is less than your earned value, your actual cost, you're doing great on that one, but the ones that you're not doing so great on are actually more than your earned value. So that's how you'll find out if you're ahead of schedule or before schedule, you have a schedule variance, or if you have a cost variance. So that was a quick demo of planned value versus your actual value versus your earned value, and how you can use that to find out where you are in a project. So you guys can unmute, and if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer those. Mark.
Did you get that?
No, didn't get that. Come again.
Jeff wanted to know if you could go over the earned value problem of the previous assignment.
The one that I just showed you, or the one that?
The one that we did in class, the
Okay.
case study.
Okay. That one?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the question? Jeff.
I don't understand. Where the 22,749 comes from and how it all this.
Did you get that?
There was a lot of feedback, sorry.
Okay. He's wondering where the 22,749,000 actual expenditures to date came from, and how you used that to calculate your actual expenditures.
The actual expenditures were these right here.
Correct.
Okay. Now this was given from the handout, which said that you had 22.749 million, and then there was another value which said that you were actually at 27 million, if I'm right. So you had 28.5 million planned expenditures to date, and then you had actual expenditures to date. If you look at the handout, it says 28.5 million, which is your planned expenditures. So what's happening is the previous manager. Go ahead.
Okay, it's confusing on how you worded it. The planned budget today, 22,749, and the actual expenditure is at 15,900.
Because what's really happening is the planned budget of what?
Didn't hear you, Mike, on the last one.
So the manager went over budget. Is that what's happening?
Yes, when they said that there are 50%, and when they were giving the numbers out, they actually had a wrong indication of where they were. The manager that was going up. And that's why when she mentioned that the project is under running, that's when she had the wrong numbers in the first place.
Okay, so in 2 weeks, we're going to be at 50%.
Yes, in 2 weeks they would. Go ahead.
Does that put us on target, or are we still behind from the previous manager?
Well, in 2 weeks you would be on schedule because you're at a 50%, but you don't have information about the number of weeks, which, for example, you don't have the number of amounts spent on the admin support, which is almost $3.6 million. And that is usually a step cost. What that means is you hire a person, and then you continue with them for some time, and then if you need more, you actually go step up, you hire another person, and then it's a step cost. It doesn't go up like a line, like a serial line. So we don't know information about that. So we actually are ahead of schedule, which means that we're over 50%. Since we don't have information about the administrative support, if we had those numbers, we'd actually be over 50%. But since administrative support is a step cost, what that means is you spend some money and then you again hire a couple of people and then it goes up. So we're actually ahead, we're actually over 50%, if you can think about that.
Okay, the confusion is still on the verbiage. Why are you calling the planned budgeted today when it says on the handout that it is the actual expenditure to date? That's what's confusing.
Those numbers were given by the previous project manager. So there's a variance between her numbers and the actual that you spent. So when she gave the numbers out, those numbers were not right. And that's what that number is from. And that's the variance between the previous manager's cost and what you actually spent.
Okay, so now that we got that clarified, how about what do you want to do with the earned value on this particular case study?
Okay. So the earned value, if you go back to the demo that I just gave you, in which what you're doing is now you want to find out is how much time you have left to finish the project up. And if you looked at the last screen, which is my last column right here, which is 5.33, 11.33, 4.83, and 6.52. So that's how many weeks are left to finish those activities up. See that? So the 5.33, 11.33, and the 4.83 and 6.52. So if you add all of those up, so that gives you a total of 28 weeks, and actually that should be a dollar sign on that one. That's a number. So that's so those are numbers, number of weeks. If you were to do the current, at the current rate, at the current spending rate is how much you would be spending out. So now what you do is you go back to the calculations we've done here, in which you find out how much effort you put in. This could be hours. And then you find out your percentage complete. And since we don't have a resource rate right now, so you just multiply those two and then combine that together. So the effort put in hour times the percentage complete. So that would be effort multiplied by the percentage complete. Well, that makes sense? So the effort that you put in, and then you multiply that by the percentage complete or the percentage finished of each one to find out the earned value of each task, and then you add that up completely.
Is it going to be its own column? Or is it just
Yes,
gonna
you
be
have
that
another
cell?
column for that one. You can have another column for that one.
Okay, good, thanks. How about the $3.6 million in administrative support?
Since we don't have any information, what to do is you take it at current values,
Okay.
and that'll be updated as you get together to the end of the project.
Okay.
Okay. So any questions on that? Right. So if I don't see any questions, I actually had on plan that I was hoping to introduce the final project for this class today. I'm a little behind on that. What I'm going to do is email you the document over the weekend, and then we can talk about it next Tuesday. So that way we can have a chance to talk about it next week. So if I don't see any questions, I actually would like to wrap up that session, that EVM, project management, and then move on to the next session, which is process strategy. Is what kind of process would you use for manufacturing or service environment, and what kind of things you would look at when you're doing a process decision. So let's take a quick look at what a process is. So when we talk about a process strategy, it is a pattern of different decisions, and these could be decisions that are made to manage the process so that they can achieve the competitive priorities. Just to give you an example of what I'm talking about here is when an automotive manufacturer decides to make a vehicle, they typically go on what is known as assembly line. And what they would do is they would have specialization of labor. So every person has a job on the assembly line. So for example, one person tightens the nuts and bolts, one person puts the hood on, and then there's another machinery which does the welding and so on. So you're using a process in which you're using an assembly line, which is mass production. Now you could have a food manufacturing company, and what they would do is they would use what is known as a batch strategy, batch manufacturing, in which they'll make small batches of products. So the first batch would be, let's say, this is a company making candies, and they will make strawberry candies. In one batch, they'll make, let's say, raspberry candies and so on. So they'll make different batches of these products so they can differentiate their products for their customer base. So if you don't have a lot of variation in your product, then you would go for something which is known as a mass production. You may make some minor changes to it, but overall the product is pretty much the same as compared to the last one. If you have a high amount of variation, that's when you would use what is known as a batch process. You can also have a hybrid of the two processes, and I'll talk about that in a moment here. So we talk about customer processes in which a supply chain process. You can have outsourcing. When we talk about, outsourcing, we can talk about how that process is completely outsourced to an outside provider. You can have warehousing. Warehousing is something in which a product is brought into a facility. It is sorted, it is received, you do some process on it, and then it's sent to the final customer. You do sourcing as well, in which sourcing you're talking about getting the inbound products, for example, the raw materials. It could be the product in its unpackaged form, and then you package it and send it out to the customer. If you've sold something to a customer, you have to have some customer service. For example, you're thinking about bringing products in, and for example, if a product was broken, then you're hoping to bring it in and do some process on that and then send it back to the customer. For example, Dell does that. If your laptop, or Lenovo also does that, is if your laptop breaks down, you ship it to them, they fix your laptop, and they ship it back to you. So that's kind of the customer service process in a supply chain. So it's not over the phone. And your logistics majors, so you know what logistics is, the process of getting not only the physical product to the customer, but the information that goes along with that, and the cash transactions. Now, cross-docking is also a process in which you bring products in on one end. The product doesn't get stored for long. It's staged in a warehouse, and then it has a demand somewhere, and it gets shipped to the customer right away. So it doesn't stay in the facility for too long. So that's cross-docking. And there's many other business function processes. There's activity-based costing. I'm probably sure you've done that in your accounting. There's asset management, billing, complaint handling from customers or vendors. You have credit management. If you're hoping to sell something, you want to make sure that the customer is credit worthy. Customer satisfaction in terms of products sold, service levels, and so on. You have employee benefits, so you have a whole range of other business functions which depend on your process. So when we talk about the process strategy decisions, we are really talking about the process structure, which is the first box up top. You're talking about how much contact you have with the customer. Do you have a high level of contact, or do you have a low level of contact? When we talk about a high level of contact, a subway is probably an example of a high level contact, versus when we talk about manufacturing, let's say Hyundai manufacturing their vehicles, that's a low level contact. So depending on what kind of contact you have with the customer, a low or a high, and what kind of flexibility you need in your production, that depends on your capital intensity. What that means is, do you have low automation? For example, if you're in a subway, you don't have any automation, versus if you're in a Hyundai plant, you have a high level of automation. And that's what determines what strategies you would use to make some changes. And that leads to your effective process design, if you may. So I talked about customer contact. When we talk about in a service process, the dimension, you have to be present, because if you're not there, the customer doesn't feel like they're getting a good service. So usually it should have a high amount of contact. And if you have customers, for example, if you go to a doctor's office, it has people that are being processed. And then you can have to have contact intensity. What that means is you need to be not only active, but you need to be visible. For example, I've been to these restaurants, and what they've done for the customer service is they've actually put a glass window between the customers where they're eating the food and where the food is actually being made. So now, even though the customer is sitting and eating the food, they actually can see how the food is being made. So that is an active and visible example, if you may. Versus when you have a low contact, it's passive, out of sight. You don't really want the customer to see what you're doing. When you're in a service environment, you need to have a personal contact, high person skills, versus a factory worker that is putting the hood on your vehicle. They don't really need to have any personal skills or personal customer service skills. And the method of delivery in a face-to-face is it's usually a face-to-face in a service environment, versus when we have a low contact, it's usually the package is shipped or you send an email, and that's a low contact example. So there's a couple of process structures and services. You can have high customer contact. You can have some customization. For example, if you're selling an insurance, if you're selling a home, if you're selling financial documents or financial services, then you usually want to have a high amount of customization, high amount of customer contact. There's a lot of process divergence. What that means is a process can take any path, and the salesperson or the customer who's selling it has to go along with that. And there has to be a high amount of flexibility in the flow as well. So here's a couple of examples of front office in a service environment. You can have a hybrid office and you can have a back office. Usually companies that do processing in the back, for example, account processing, credit transactions, are the back office. The front office is the salespersons, the people who are selling the product, your front desk person, and so on. That's your front office. Some cases you can have a hybrid office in which you have the customer be introduced to the front secretary, and now they're taken back into the doctor's office. So that could be an example of a hybrid office. Now, in a manufacturing setting, you can, as I talked about that before, you can have a job process. So when you think of a job process, you're thinking of a one of a kind. One example that comes to mind right away is the Penobscot-Narrows Bridge, which is an example of a job process. It only happened once and is pretty unique. So job process is one of a kind, unique. On the other hand, batch process can be small or large. So the candy example applies here. And the automobile example that I gave you is the line process, in which if you're making an automobile, it's 24/7, 365. I'm sorry, it goes on for a couple of days, but you're making the same product for a continuous period of time. The last one is your continuous flow, which is the 24/7, 365, a process which never stops and goes on for a couple of years. To give an example of that, you can think of that as the refinery. You can also think of that as the nuclear power plant. They only shut down once in maybe 10, 15 years. Pipeline flow, that's again an example of continuous flow as well. So usually commodity-based, huge volumes, one or two products at the max. Line process, they may have a couple of variations. For example, you could produce a SUV, you could produce a family vehicle, you can produce a small vehicle, and that's an assembly line. Batch process has more variation of the product. So you could be producing different kinds of candies, you could produce a candy cane or so on. So you have much more variety, but your volumes are much low. Job process, only one product, only gets produced once and very unique. So this is kind of the split between job, batch, line, and continuous flow. Let me just stop here for a second and see if anybody has any questions. Mark, Jeff, Mike, all good?
All good.
Okay, super. Making sense so far? Okay. Now, you can also do what is known as make to order. So when you talk about make to order, you are receiving the order, and after you receive the order, you make the product. So it's completely, you don't have anything at all, and you're making it from scratch. The other one is known as postponement, assemble to order. And in this, you use the postponement strategy, which IKEA uses. Even Dell uses this. There's some standardized pieces that they have on hand. And once you receive the order, they put those together and they customize it to your needs. So you have postponement and you're customizing it to the customer's need. And what you also have is known as make to stock, in which you're mass producing the product beforehand in anticipation of demand. So what that means is you're producing cereals, you're producing food products, um, like cooked beans in a can, and you ship them, you make them, you ship them to the store, and you're hoping to sell them sometime in the future. So let me stop at this point and give you a couple of examples of make to stock, assemble to order, um, make to order, and then a couple of postponement strategies which companies have taken on. So how many of you have had apparel that you've had customized? Have you bought anything that you've had customized from someone?
Mike had a laptop customized.
Oh, what kind of a laptop was that?
MacBook Pro.
MacBook Pro.
Oh, MacBook Pro. Now, did you have it so that you had your name embossed on it and so on?
Yes.
Okay.
All of that.
All of that. Okay. Let me show you an example of a company which does jewelries, and they actually can customize and send you a custom built jewelry in less than a day. So the website is bluenile.com, and they do diamond jewelry, and you can begin with a diamond. So you select what kind of a diamond you need, and it does say only diamonds available for delivery before the Valentine's Day are displayed. So that means anything which is after that date cannot be delivered. So that means tomorrow, they can deliver it tomorrow. And I'm gonna go a little less fancy, I guess, and select that one. And once I see it, I can add it to the ring. I can choose my setting. That looks good. So I put in my metal. I've selected this style, and I get the ring size, which is 6, actually 6.5, and I add it to my basket. And it says if I order it within the next hour and 40 minutes, that they will deliver it by tomorrow. So this is a totally custom built, custom diamond, which they can deliver in less than 1 day, which is pretty amazing. So that is known as mass customization. Now, how can Blue Nile do this? They have the diamonds ready to go, and they have people that are on the other side, and what they can do is they can customize the ring within less than half an hour, and they'll have it to FedEx. FedEx is on their shop, and they're based out of Seattle. And once they have it on Seattle, they have it to FedEx, and they can do an overnight and have it to me essentially by tomorrow. So which is pretty amazing. Another company which does that is Nike ID. And has anyone of you ever ordered something on there? Again, it's the same process, if you may. No? Okay. But it's the same process in which what you can do is you can go in and you can select the type of shoe that you want ordered. You can shop a collection. You can customize with Nike ID. So once I shop the collection, I can find out which shoes are the ones that really fancy me. Let me just, whoops. So this is LeBron James. Wow, that's really fancy. That is. So that looks much like my and again I can customize it down to the last thing. They have so many things I can customize, and for less than the same price that I would get this at store, I can have my name embossed, I can have it shipped to me, and this takes less than 7 days. Another company which does it is M&M's. And it's the same process, if you may. I can select different kind of candies. I can add an image. I don't have any images now, but I can add images, I can add clip cards, I can add a message, and so on. And so on. I can get a Valentine's Day gift, and so again, that is mass. This all is what I'm talking about now is mass customization. So companies can do this because they have some standardized products ready to go, but at the same time they have some variations in the process which they can make that they can customize it to the customer's needs. So let me stop at this point and see if you have any questions. No? Take that as a no. How about Jeff and Mike? Nope. Okay. Well, I think I'll stop at this point and continue this discussion next week. I am planning to still put the video for the Microsoft project on, and I'll walk the different steps on how to put that through and how to put EVM in that process as well. So again, look out for that sometime tomorrow or so on. So look out for that sometime tomorrow that I can put that on. And again, it's a reinforcement of what we just talked about today. Okay. And I've extended the deadline for that to next Monday. I'm still looking for the 3 questions on this one today, and I'll post a video for this online as well. Okay. So if I don't see any questions, I'm going to pause my screen and stop my recording, and then I'll post the video on Canvas as soon as it's done. Enjoy, be safe,